Ben, welcome to the show. I'm going to dive straight in with just getting a bit of background about you before we go into all things marketing and why it is that marketing apparently doesn't work.
Okay.
First, I'd love to know a bit about your background and what it is that brings you to what it is that you do today.
Okay. Yes. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I've been in marketing for over 20 years now, which makes me feel a little bit old. And I actually studied at university, so I think I'm one of those rare people that works in what they studied.
That is quite rare.
Yes, it's completely different to what I studied, although the principles are the same, but obviously the tactics have changed dramatically. My background is all in B2B, so businesses selling to other businesses, primarily software and services. Started out at a law firm. That will make sure you pay attention to detail because lawyers are sticklers for that. So it's quite a good grounding. Agency for 7 years when marketing or digital went from having a website to 80% of marketing budgets. So that was a really good time to be in a digital agency. And then various software companies across automotive, NHS procurement, and other software providers. So
So it's interesting. So you've got the experience of in-house, of agency, and now of working for yourself as well. So I love that brings, even though you obviously have a specialism of the type of audience you work with, there's very different ways of working. And actually, I'd imagine there's a lot of learning from that.
Yeah, I've always been a believer that never to hire from within industry. So that's a big bugbear of mine is when you go for recruiters or you go for jobs, they want you to have worked in the same industry. So you can onboard quickly, but over time, you just end up doing what your competitors are doing and you all end up sounding the same and doing the same things. So I have never, when I've been in roles, I've never hired from the same sector because, the same principles underlie all marketing. But if you can bring approaches that worked in adjacent sectors or completely different sectors, you'll end up standing out from your competitors and you won't all end up sounding the same. So,
I love that you've said that already. I know we're going to have a brilliant conversation. Actually, in the last episode, this came up because I think, especially when it comes to niching, a lot of people kind of obviously niche within a very specific industry. But I think there are lots of benefits to that. But one of the risks can be exactly what you said, which is you keep repurposing the same thinkings and ideologies as opposed to sometimes something might seem completely random, but actually the thinking that you can bring in. So, I was in parallel working at one point with somebody who was in timber and somebody who was in coaching, and they are completely different, but you'd be surprised what you can creatively borrow. So I love that you brought that up as to kind of get us warmed up.
Yeah, there's a lot behind that. I've written a blog post on that because it has been a bugbear all my whole life, really, because I worked for a law firm for 4 years and then I thought I needed to change and all the recruiters wanted to put me forward to other law firms. And I was, I've done that. I want to take my skills and learn elsewhere. So yeah, it's been a bugbear that it's easier to land those jobs in the same sector, but I think it's to the detriment of everyone if you do keep recruiting people from the same space.
Yeah, I love that.
In marketing, I get it in sales because you've got the connections and the relationships and you're hoping that they might bring their clients with them, but marketing, I think you're definitely better off.
Yeah, or different is like medics,
Yeah.
Probably not going to hire a dentist, to do your gastric band, but yeah, in marketing, I can see the benefits of it for sure. So what actually brought us to have this conversation together is obviously we know each other through local networks. And one day, a few months back, I opened up my LinkedIn and I saw an amazing post. And I'll be honest, I was like, oh, fuck you, Ben. It was a really good post. And I was actually a little bit jealous. And the post was, and I'm going to this is basically the topic of the entire conversation, was something that you keep hearing over and over and over again. And I'd love for you to jump in with what that post was. And actually, what inspired you, first of all, to really kind of put that post together that I think just nailed it because it got so much engagement that it clearly resonated with a lot of people.
Yes. So at various stages throughout my career, I've been told marketing doesn't work. And particularly one place I worked, that was the first thing the founder said to me. No one believes marketing works. And I took that as a challenge. Okay, well, I'll prove to you it does work.
Hold my beer.
Yeah. Didn't quite work out like that. But yeah, and so over, throughout my career, it's a recurring theme. But then there are recurring reasons as to why it doesn't work. And it's not the practice or discipline of marketing itself. It's quite often how marketing is viewed or seen by the business or the founder or the CEO, which prevents it from working. And I'd been sitting on that post and the thoughts for ages and finally put it live and realized, okay, this is a thing and I was correct. And it's not just me thinking that. And it's really kind of lit a fuse under me and other people. Like, okay, this is problems that marketers see everywhere they go. And if it helps business owners reflect on, okay, yeah, we do that, or, oh yeah, I expect leads tomorrow when I'm selling a 12-month subscription at $3,000 a month that needs 6 decision makers to buy it. And maybe that's never going to happen. They're not going to buy it off one email, which is kind of what, we sent emails yesterday. Where are all the leads? Well, you haven't done any marketing for 12 months. So what, you're just going to land in someone's inbox. They're going to sign a contract for that amount of investment overnight.
And I think a lot of that comes from maybe the dated thinking of back in the day when you would put an advert out and people would be like, oh yes, that's what I need, and come to you. Whereas content now, especially, when we're talking in this context of social media, but it could actually be emails, it could be anything really. The expectation that you're going to land somebody off the back of one thing shows, understandably, a lack of awareness of the journey somebody needs to go on to actually really kind of engage and trust you, which I'd love to dive into more. But just before that, on a tangent, because I think you said something that's really important, that you were sitting on this content in your head for quite a while before you finally posted it, and then you found loads of people resonated. And I just wanted to say that I think so many of us are guilty of that. And so if anyone's listening and is sitting there thinking, oh, I've got this content in my head, just for the love of God, get that out there, because you'd be surprised. Like, you're not going to be the only human thinking it, and you'd be surprised sometimes those are the ones that actually end up being really powerful.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even working in marketing and using social media for clients, there's still that fear when you're doing it for yourself that someone's you're going to get these people jumping on. They're going, "This is a load of nonsense. What are you talking about?" But if you've got the experience and you've worked in space for long enough, you kind of know these things are true. And most people won't, if they think that, they won't say anything. They'll probably just scroll past, especially on platforms like LinkedIn where it's a bit more professional. So yeah, if you think you've got a great idea, don't sit on it, just float it and see. It's going to land with other people. Other people are thinking it.
And the worst that's going to happen is no one comments. Like you said, it's very rare for somebody to actually challenge it.
Yeah.
And if they do, it's an opportunity for a conversation. But the worst that's probably going to happen is that somebody will scroll past it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's dive in, because what you did is you did this post, which was part 1, and actually you very recently released part 2.
Yep.
And what you did is released it as like a carousel where you actually broke down the notion of my marketing doesn't work, and then the principles behind what you're hearing and the reasons why business owners are coming to the conclusion their marketing doesn't work. And in the time that we have, I'd love to dive into as many of those as you have time to talk us through,
absolutely.
because I would imagine, well, as marketers and as business owners ourselves and anyone listening, there will definitely be people resonating with, oh yeah, I've done that. And so yeah, any tips that you can then give to kind of overcome that would be great. So yeah, maybe if you take us back to the first post.
So yeah, the first one was, you believe life's a pitch. So always trying to sell. So you're never giving free insider information. And I'm coming from more of a B2B background where you've got to build that trust and you're looking for big investment and long-term commitments from clients. If you're selling a pair of socks, you might be able to send an email and sell a pair of socks because someone needs socks at that moment. But when you're selling subscriptions, you need to build that trust first and familiarity. So if you're always trying to sell, no one ever gets to know what value you can deliver, what benefits they can expect from your products, because you're always going with a sales message. So that you'll end up, people will just unsubscribe, switch off, or ignore you. It's kind of like, if you meet someone for the first time in real life and they're just trying to talk about themselves and how great they are, you don't talk to them for very long, do you? And if you see them at the next event, you go and avoid them. So it's kind of that same principles. And a lot of these, I think, if you put yourself in that situation in real life, it makes more sense. People can relate a bit more, perhaps.
So I love that. So it's speak to your clients in the same way as you would, perhaps not exactly the same way as you would speak to somebody in a pub, but think of it as building a relationship, which actually is the same, whether it's business or personal.
Yeah, and building trust and people appreciating your experience and knowledge. So sharing that insight that you've got that they haven't, that will help them whether they buy your product or not, which I think a lot of people feel like, well, we're giving them something for free. And yeah, you are, but that builds the trust. And then when they're ready to buy, or if, a lot of people are with a current provider. So, one of this might lead into another point, but only 3 to 5% of a B2B audience in market at any one time, because they're either not problem aware, solution aware, or they're with an existing provider. So marketing's job isn't to try and sell to them now, it's to make sure that when the 95% hit that 5% window, then 81% of B2B buyers buy from the first company they think of. So if you're not the first one they think of, you're already at a real disadvantage. And if they're not thinking of you at all, you've got no chance. So marketing needs to be thought of as a more long-term brand building exercise. Yes, you need your activation for those that are in market at the moment, but the majority of your marketing should be about building trust, recognition, so that when people are in market, you spring to mind because you've given them loads of useful insight and articles and thought leadership pieces or whatever it might be, that we can trust them. They've not been trying to sell to us every time we've engaged with them. They've actually just been really helpful and useful, so that when the time comes, they trust you and more likely to think of you.
Absolutely. And I think you just touched on a really important point there about marketing, because I think marketing and sales are absolutely go hand in hand, but marketing should be seen as the journey towards sales. And there is a point where they blur, as opposed to it being the sales journey. And I think that maybe kind of picks on the point of where some people perhaps don't do marketing the right way, because you are selling from the outset. This is us, this is our product, this is what we do, this is our launch.
Yeah.
And you haven't done the warm-up, which is the actual marketing.
Yeah. It's a long-term game, especially in the B2B software sector, because people, there's 7 to 13 is the latest number of people on a buying committee for a B2B product. And then there's even more if it's complex. So you're not going to get them to make a decision quickly, to put it that way. So you need to be nurturing them towards a decision and making sure as many people on that committee have heard of you when your sponsor or your advocate within the company comes to them and goes, look, we've got this problem, these people can solve it. You want, if half of that buying committee goes, oh yeah, I've heard of them, you're onto a winner, and they're only going to hear about you if you've shared useful and insightful information and not just sales messages.
And even more important to make sure that your messaging and your personality, personal brand or brand of the firm comes across, because if they've heard of you, in this day and age, we have access to more and more and more people to be very easily put in front of these people. They no longer have to book a meeting and turn up to an office. You only need to scroll past your phone and they will be getting several options. So it's thinking, what is going to make me memorable and me stand aside? That's takes us back to your point about building that relationship.
I was just going to, and the whole not sounding like everyone else in your industry. So you stand out. So don't hire people from the same industry. Which kind of leads into the second point, which is it was all me with you. So marketing isn't about your company. It's about your target audience and how you make their life better, how you help them make more money, save time, save money, whatever the benefits are of your product, depending on who you're targeting. That's what it's all about. It's all about the benefits you deliver for customers. It's not about the technology. Everything's AI at the moment. I don't care if it's AI, if it's rubbish. Like, I'd rather a non-backed AI product or a solution if it solves my problem better. Everyone just thinks tacking AI and thinks we're futuristic or on trend or we're current, but that's not the important bit. The important bit is what problem the AI helps solve.
Right.
So marketing is actually about your customers and for your customers. It's not for your ego or your latest features that you think are amazing. No one really cares what that button does until they know the overall problems that your product solves for them and how it makes their life better. So that was the second point, is effectively that marketing is about your customers, not about yourself.
And what specifically do you see your clients doing wrong, or that they could be doing better on that point? So how do you see them not thinking about their clients enough?
Yes, it's quicker and easier to talk about your product and features because you know them and you can talk about them quite easily and you haven't got to do any research. It's harder because you have to speak to your customers, which should be quite straightforward, but speaking to your customers will highlight the reasons they chose you, the reasons they almost didn't choose you, which is a key question to ask them because you can't ask the people that didn't buy from you. So ask your customers, what almost made you not buy from us? What pain points do we help you solve? And if you've got access to usage stats, see what they're using most, what they're using it for. And that can give you some really good messaging about, okay, this is the problems we solve for clients. This is what they're using within the product. This is why they say they chose us. So let's use that in all of our messaging. But obviously that takes time. From experience, founders by nature are energetic, impatient, and all the things you need to be an entrepreneur and make things happen. So that, that pause in, right, let's just do some research, make sure the messaging's right. They don't see any activity going on and productivity happening. So they think you're not doing anything. and I've experienced this in a few companies, like, what are you doing? Well, we're making sure everything's related to our customers. Man, just send an email now. Tell them, do you want it? No? Okay, we'll move to the next person.
Check the box. Something's
Yeah.
been done.
And then
Yeah.
sometimes you just, you get the pressure to just send an email, which I'll touch on that later. But yeah, I think it's easier to talk about yourself and your product and your features than it is to talk about the benefits, which if you're time strapped or resource poor, it's the easiest thing to do. And just being visible, you're told to be visible, be on socials, and it's an easy trap to fall into. But just taking a step back, you don't have to do, you're sitting on a gold mine of information in your current customers. So just speak to a few of them, and you'll get one or two nuggets and turn that into your messaging and that into your content, and that will land with the audience you haven't already converted. So.
And do you find sometimes that the business owners you work with might say to you, oh, it's okay, I've done the client in-depth work, I know that, and then maybe they did that 10 years ago or even 5 years ago?
Yeah, that happens frequently. They just often want to rush straight to the doing, which I get the pressure, I get it, but you're missing an opportunity. And yeah, I speak to my customers all the time. You probably speak to the ones you like all the time, or the ones that either have problems all the time because they're phoning customer services or they're speaking to account managers, but you don't speak to the majority of your customers. And like you said, yeah, you might have done it when you came up with your initial problem, but that might have been 10 years ago. You might have broadened your audience. You might be in different sectors. You might be working with different functions within a business. So those pain points would have changed over time. So yeah, it's important to keep updating that message so you're making sure it lands with your audience today and not with your audience 10 years ago.
Yeah. And I think we can both say when you've got pressure to deliver, when you're thinking about a business, a team, etc., sometimes you do just want to see delivery out there. But it's so worth putting I know you're going to come on to all of these points, but it is so worth putting the groundwork in first, because otherwise then we end up with marketing doesn't work.
Yes.
Because it's putting content out for content's sake and not actually thinking about, is that really landing with my client as they are today, not as they were last year. And especially, I think it's fair to say in the last 5 years, we've been through so much change that everything's changed and people's perceptions and worries and fears, aspirations have changed. Even if it's a slight tweak, that tweak will make a difference. And if your competitors have done this work and you haven't, then their message is going to be landing better.
Yeah. And I think in the era of AI where you can scale quickly or produce me 10 bits of content on this and schedule them for next month, if you don't do the groundwork, you're just expediting the problem. So you're just putting the wrong message out there more frequently. So you're doing more damage if you don't do the boring bit of marketing.
Yeah.
Well, what some might view as the boring bit, but it's critical. Yeah.
So what was your next point on your first brilliant post that we can all learn from?
Again, this is prevalent in B2B marketing, particularly when you're selling subscription-based products. But yes, you don't believe patience is a virtue. So again, there's a common theme is you expect results tomorrow when you haven't done the groundwork. And again, this leans into the fact that a small percentage of your target audience are in market at any one time. So if you're just focusing on them, you're going to miss when the other 95 to 97% move through that window because they won't be thinking of you because you've put them off because you're always trying to sell. So and marketing takes time. It takes time to build that trust and recognition and familiarity. So you need to be consistent and persistent. And it can take 9 to 12 to 15 months. I've worked in companies where the sales cycle is longer than that, but they expect marketing to convince people through various random soft touch points to buy the product or give their details to be nurtured, when sales who are speaking with them and seeing people can't get them over the line in longer periods of time.
And again, it's remembering that distinguishment between the role of marketing versus the role of sales, and thinking about the business from what do we need today versus what do we need to be building so that in 6 or 12 or 18 months, you have got a warmed audience you can sell to. And sometimes I appreciate it can be really difficult to think about the sales that you're going to make in 18 months as opposed to ones that you want to make tomorrow. But if you want a sustainable long-term business, you can't just think about your sales today. You've got to be thinking ahead, and that's the role of marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't resonate with that point enough, because I know how frustrating it can be, because we will want to make sales now, right?
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
I know from, because I do very similar work to you, what it's like when your clients have the expectation of, well, it's been a month now. I'm not seeing the leads, let alone the sales coming through the door. And it's that the understanding of like you said, it's just that patience is so important.
Yeah. And when they do come, they'll be warmer because they've been engaging with insightful, relevant information. They'll understand your offering and the benefits better when they get to that stage. So sales job should be easier. And yeah, marketing needs to support sales, absolutely. So when the buyer is ready, sales should be armed with a lot of content that can appeal to all the people on the buying committee.
Yeah.
That they can provide their advocate within the business. Okay, you need to get IT over the line. Okay, here's our pen test results, and here's our uptime, and here's all the data around our IT security, and which the IT person will want to know. And then procurement might worry that you're going to go under. So here's our financials, and we've been around for 30 years, and we've survived X. And so by doing the groundwork and looking at your messaging, you'll probably aid sales when the time comes, because you'll have a lot more ammunition for them to use to get that buying committee over the line at the time.
And actually, I think that relationship between sales and marketing is so important. I often see that being disjointed. I worked with a company last year that said, "Oh, one of the great things about you is that you tie things to sales." And I was surprised at that. I was like, who doesn't?
Yeah.
Because you should be looking at the entire journey and how marketing supports sales. And that includes actually, if you have got representatives in those teams, they should absolutely be communicating so that that journey is seamless for the team and for the customer.
Yep.
So that it doesn't feel like a different experience when they get to sales. So if you've done a beautiful 18-month nurture and then you get a really hardcore salesperson at the end of it, that would feel really disjointed in terms of the journey. So that communication should feel really consistent as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The sales and marketing relationship is something that raises its head in every organization. I think you see that some businesses now have a chief revenue officer that's set over both, but they're always from sales. So they're always of that mindset. So it's our job as marketers to educate and take them on the journey and show the data and show that this isn't just us saying this. This has been studied. There's evidence out there to support it. But if we play the long game, 12 to 18 months time, depending on what you're selling, you'll see the benefits of the groundwork we're laying now.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it is important to stress that marketing is data driven, and it is linked to sales. And I think sometimes it can be seen as the nice to have fluffy bit, and probably the first thing that gets culled if the budget is gone.
There's more on that as well.
Which I'm sure is to come. But actually, if marketing has been done properly, yes, absolutely, it's about your brand perception and your fonts and your colors. All of that comes into it, but it comes into it because of how that supports the psychology of the brand you're putting out there, which leads directly to sales. So it is very data driven, or should be.
Yeah, but there are still elements you can't measure, which I think people find frustrating. Yeah, a lot of founders want to know, what was the last thing they did? Well, the last thing they did was Google the brand name and come to the website. We don't know how they knew the brand. We don't know if they read a load of PR articles, they saw us at events, they've been on the website because they're not accepting cookies. So you still can't quite measure everything as much as we'd all like to, but there is still a lot of data behind. You can look at branded search terms. Are they increasing? Website traffic, obviously, form fills. There's other metrics you can use, but there's still I think it's 70% of the buyer journey is you can't measure and you don't know all the touch points. So you just need to bear that in mind. If you've been spending a load on PR and you're getting a load of leads coming through, but they're all searching for your brand, it's safe to assume to some degree the PR is having an effect, but you can't measure which articles they read or saw. So,
exactly. And even with engagement on socials, I hear it time and time again of somebody suddenly, comes into the pipeline. It's like, oh, I've been looking at all of your incredible content. And you look back and that person's not engaged in one single one.
Yep.
Not everybody engages. That doesn't mean they're not seeing it. That doesn't mean it's not coming up on their feed. Same with emails, actually. Often people aren't opening their email. I have loads of people in my mailing list that I don't open their email, but I don't unsubscribe because I'm like, I know you're there.
Yep.
And it means that if I'm getting that consistent weekly email from them, they are in the back of my mind as or when I need that service.
Absolutely.
So I'm not unsubscribing. I'm also not opening it. Yeah, you'd be surprised how much, to your point, is not measurable, but actually does form part of that picture.
Yeah. I mean, we'd all, marketers, founders, business leaders, we all wish it was all completely measurable and we knew exactly which touch points they used.
Wouldn't that be great?
It would be amazing. We can dream. But yeah, I think we're almost at a point now where it's going the other way, where people aren't opting into consent and accepting cookies and stuff. So it's might go back more the other way, where you can measure less and less perhaps, but we'll see. We'll see where that goes.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff around data protection has made measuring a lot harder. But it's funny how I think a lot of the systems seem to adjust and find ways around it. Cool. So what else have you got for us? What other nuggets?
Well, the next one was you treat agencies like suppliers and not partners. Agencies take time to understand your business, your target audience, what's gone before. They often have to unpick the mess of the previous agency. And SEO is a great example. Like Nick said on one of your previous podcasts, it takes time to see results, but people still expect overnight success. Well, why aren't we ranking for that yet? Because you've done nothing, you haven't built any authority with the search engines. We call you Google juice. I don't know if they still use that term, but your Google juices run dry. So we need to refill that. And it just takes time. And I've been worked with a lot of founders that just haven't got that patience for that. I know SEO. We should be doing this and this. And then the agency's 6 months in. No, they're gone. Let's get another one. Or let's not bother, and you just don't give it time to reap the benefits of what's been sown earlier on. So yeah, it's just, and working with agencies, they're not a supplier, they're an extension of your team or your business. So treat them like that rather than what are they doing for us this month? What are they doing there? Why haven't they done this? Well, because we took 4 months, we took 3 weeks to go back to them on our keywords. An agency relationship is two-way. A lot of the issues when I was working agency side were clients weren't feeding back in time. So they would lose the resource that was allocated to them, which would then have to be assigned to someone else because agencies need to survive and bill their hours. And so that it is a relationship, and the company's just as equally as responsible as the agency for results and feeding back in a timely manner. So it's just something I've seen many times is agencies are seen as an aside, but you need to try and bring them in as part of your team and catch up regularly and feed back in a timely manner so that they can do what you're paying them to do.
And actually, that's also about, particularly with smaller businesses where the founder is heavily involved. I see often the founder can be the bottleneck, and that's not a criticism because it's understandable why, because that's your baby, isn't it? That there's it can be really hard to delegate away the sign off, for example, or the initiation of the content or whatever it may be. But if it gets to the point where an agency or a freelancer or even a team member is not able to deliver because it's sat with the founder, then I think that's a really interesting time to kind of really think about, I don't know, what the strategy should be and the tactics so that founder can ultimately start to remove themselves from that.
Yeah, and I think marketing seems to be the area that founders like the most, or
They
are
do, don't they?
less
Yeah.
don't like to give up because it is the face of their company.
Yeah.
It is them, in a way. Whereas oh yeah, finance, yeah, someone can do the numbers. HR, yeah, someone can make sure we don't fall foul there, and we've got everything in place and employees looked after. They don't seem, from my experience anyway, as involved in those areas of the business as they are marketing, because marketing is the face of the business. So trying to get creative signed off or copy signed off, it was like a real challenge because they have their view of how it should be, which is often talk about the product, talk about the software, and not the client. So,
And that's a really, really interesting point you've touched on, actually, because I think founder might say, well, I don't do numbers. So you would immediately get an accountant and then a finance director, whatever it is, and you'd get updates, but you probably wouldn't be checking all the numbers and doing all of that and all of the different departments that you mentioned. I think you're so right with marketing because that is about, most founders will have started by doing everything themselves, right? So they would have a message that's worked. And I think what's interesting is that there's a point at which that doesn't work anymore. So what got you to a certain point might well have been you having the conversations at networking events or with people that are referred to you, but that's a very different message and conversation to the one you're going to have when you're reaching out to completely cold people.
yeah.
And that's when I think it's probably the right time for a founder to think, I've done a great job at getting the marketing right up until this point, but do I have the marketing expertise to take it to the next level? And I
Yeah.
think that's maybe the point at which you and I come in, where sometimes there's friction and almost a bit of coaching, really, in getting
Yeah.
the founder to let go and understand that actually a different message is maybe what's going to help them moving forward.
Yes, I think they can only scale so much on their own from marketing and sales. So obviously a lot of founders are good salespeople, so
Yeah.
they like that side of it. And I've seen friction between sales and founders as well because they want to go in and make the deal at the end because that's the adrenaline rush that they like. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's a challenge that sometimes I struggle to overcome that and push back. But if founders aren't willing to get an expert's view or an outside view, then they shouldn't probably look at a senior marketing resource, perhaps hire someone internally and get them to do it your way. But I'd advocate against that, because having that experience from multiple sectors and years will just help you look at it from a slightly different point of view.
Oh, definitely. And again, these points all interweave, don't they? Because one of the first points you made was about bringing different ideas in. And actually, if you've only ever sold one way, that's great. That may well be working, and it might still be working, but that doesn't mean there's other things you can't interweave that somebody can bring from different expertise. And that's where I think it is sometimes really valuable to have, even if you've got an in-house team, to actually work with external people, even if it's a consultant occasionally, to bring in fresh thinking and ideas.
Yeah, because if you're hiring a junior and just telling them what to do, you're still not necessarily doing the
You're
right
just recycling
things,
the
or you're
same
just
stuff, aren't you?
recycling, or someone else is doing the admin for your idea of marketing, which it can work. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but having that outside expertise and more senior voice that's willing to push back or perhaps suggest a different approach, where a junior will probably just do what they're told to some degree.
Yeah.
There's definitely value in having that more senior voice in the room, even just on a fractional part or a part-time basis.
And when you say fractional, it's a word that started to appear increasingly so, especially over the last year or two. It's been quite big in America for a while, but it's definitely come across the borders. So I think most of us know what that is, but can you just explain the benefits of fractional? I know it's a bit of a tangent, but just because you raised it there, I think it's quite an important point.
Yeah, no, to be fair, it's good to call me out on that, because a few people have said, well, what do you mean by fractional? So to me, fractional means you get all my expertise and experience for a fraction of the cost for a fraction of the time. Most companies don't probably need a marketing director, CMO level person full time. They're expensive and they're not slightly more removed from the doing. But having access to someone on a 2, 3, 5 days a month basis to help steer a junior team or a team or the founder is really valuable. So to me, it's about that, getting access to all that wealth of experience and knowledge, but without the overhead and the long-term commitment, which a lot of scaling businesses don't have the need for.
No. And at what point would you say that it's about the right time for somebody to maybe consider a fractional? Because there'll be times when it's definitely too early.
So I'm finding the sweet spot is, from my point of view, looking at B2B businesses, and they reach about 15 to 20 people, and they've been doing a reasonable job of marketing, but they've exhausted their network and they need to kind of take it to the next level.
Do you mean 15, 20 people in the team or in a marketing, in the business?
Yeah, sorry. Should have clarified that. Yeah, within the business. And they're either, right, we need to hire a junior marketer and tell them what to do, which is great if you're founder or you've got senior people in the team who have marketing experience. An agency, which can be expensive and you're paying for a lot for sort of project management fees, or perhaps a fractional hire who can do the strategy and some of the doing as well. So I've got a client that we set the strategy and I'm actually delivering that for them as well at the moment. So yeah, I think it's at that point where we've been doing this and we've all been chipping in, but now we can't just get the office manager to be posting on social because they know how to use Instagram. We need a bit more of a strategic process and approach to our marketing, and those tend to be the three options. And that's the time when I think fractional should be in the, or part-time support, whatever you want to call it, should be in that mix of options that people are looking at.
Okay, cool. And actually, you just mentioned the word strategy, which you and I both know is so fundamental. But I think we'll both also agree is probably the very last thing that many people think they need. They will almost always start with the things you can see, the website, the socials, the emails, like the tactics.
Yeah.
Can we just dive a little bit into strategy and like what, I know it's going to sound like an obvious question, but what is, in the context of marketing, what is the strategy and why is it important?
Yeah, so it's the bit before the marketing and the activation. So I think when you say to people, you're in marketing, they go, they either think, you do emails, you do ads, you do social. But actually marketing is a much broader discipline, and the strategy piece is where you do the groundwork. So you look at your positioning and messaging, who's your ideal customer persona or personas, what pain points do you solve for them, where are they, where do they hang out, where can you reach them, how easy are they to reach, and then everything falls back on that. So you don't just go blasting messages willy-nilly. It's all tied back to, okay, this is for that customer persona. We're talking to the pain points we help them solve. and so that everything you do lands with your target audience and the sector you're focusing on. I mean, there's more to it than that,
I mean,
but
yes.
in its broadest sense is kind of just taking a step back. What do we stand for? What do we do? How do we help our customers? What do they want from us? If you've got existing customers, speak to them. Yeah, it's just laying the foundations before just running and doing loads of stuff, which is the want of a lot of people, because they feel like if they're busy, they're doing marketing, posting on social all the time. We're delighted to be nominated, or so-and-so's joined the team, or buy now. That's not strategy. That's just sales dressed up as
Noise,
marketing,
isn't it?
and it
Yeah.
noise. So it's coming back to, what do we stand for? What insight and information can we uniquely share that no one else can? What data do we sit on that we can help spot trends in the industry and form opinions around that? So just thinking what you stand for, taking a step back and a breath, what makes you different, what are your brand pillars, so you're consistent in your messaging and your marketing before you just go out there and start doing stuff. It's a bit of a roundabout way of answering that, but
No,
yeah,
absolutely. And I just think it's so important, and it's so overlooked or done the wrong way round that
Yeah.
I think it's kind of worth calling out. And then tied to that, what's your experience of working with businesses, and what is, or importantly, isn't tracked and measured, and what anyone should be thinking about, perhaps if they aren't tracking any numbers at the moment?
Yes, so it depends what you're trying to achieve. And actually, on the second post, there's something about your KPIs keep moving, or you're tying the wrong KPIs to the wrong activity. So, for example, this is a brand campaign. So this is about putting us front of mind, gaining recognition and traction. This is not about lead generation. But ultimately, panic sets in and you start trying to measure leads against what is brand building campaign
I love
or
that. So
activity.
really, before you do anything, and this ties it back to strategy, it's what's the outcome you're actually trying to
Yeah.
achieve here, and then what is the actual metric that you need
Do
to
we
look at?
want more branded search terms, for example? That's quite one way you can measure impact of your brand activity, is how many people actually search for you as a brand as opposed to your product or service you offer.
Yeah.
Do we just want to gain followers on social? We don't want any of them to download anything. We don't expect them to request a demo. This is just about purely gaining followers that are in that 95% of people not ready to buy, so that when they are ready, we've been engaging with them because they've started following us, because we're sharing insight.
Yeah.
And if your strategy is to position yourselves and gain trust and recognition for being insightful and useful, don't expect leads off of the back of it. And that's where I think marketing activity butts up against each other, because there is that pressure to deliver leads, and that's fine. That can be a separate stream of your marketing. Is right that when people are doing X, Y, and Z on the website, or when people do sign up for a webinar or request a product sheet or things like that, that's your signal that, okay, these people are in market. So you should be trying to get leads from that section of your audience, not the 95% that you're warming and nurturing for the time when they are ready to buy. So I think you need to be disciplined on keeping those quite separate and focusing the right metrics on the right activity, if that makes sense.
So I guess the message there is get clear on what you actually want to achieve high level,
Yeah.
what the goals are for the business, tie that into what that means for your marketing activities, and maybe not 20, maybe 5 or 6. What does that actually look like in terms of results? And then just stick with those. Don't keep changing it. And back to your point of like consistency and patience, just keep with the activity, even if you don't initially see the results, because it doesn't always immediately show a visible result.
Yeah. And pick 2 or 3 to start with. Don't, because you can measure everything. If you're measuring everything and everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. Just focus small. Say, okay, we want to gain followers and we want more downloads for X, Y, and Z, or we want newsletter signups, and just focus on those 2 things. And your newsletter signups or downloads might be the ones, okay, then we put them into a nurture campaign and hit them with product marketing and the benefits of our products, not sales messages, just we can save you X, Y, and Z, or make you X, Y, and Z. But everyone else is just that 95%. You're just, right, they're interested in us, they've started to follow us, let's not hit them with sales messages. And just focus on, I'd almost have just 2, one on your activation and one on your brand building, and start with those and then add to them over time, rather than having 10 KPIs and not measuring anything really.
It's like with everything, start and refine something well and then add to it.
Yeah.
I feel like we are going to need to do a part 2 of this episode to cover, because I know there's so many points to cover. in a moment, I'm going to get you to share your success and words to put on ice. But just whilst we're still on this, I would encourage anybody to basically go and check out the 2 posts that are in your LinkedIn, which I think both have articles attached to them.
Yes.
Because they go into a lot more depth. And what's your LinkedIn? So, and we'll
So
obviously
it's just
email marketing, fantastic. And we'll make sure that's linked at the bottom of the show as well. And I think there's just so much benefit to come from that. And I definitely think there's a part 2 of this to
there probably is.
to be had
yeah.
as well. But I would love to know, as with all brand mixology guests, what is the one word you would add to our cocktail of success? And then your one word that you would encourage everybody to put on ice. And if you could write them down and explain them, that would be amazing.
So the one I would put in would be persistence. Just keep going. From a marketing point of view and as a business owner, like that's been my struggle. Is it going solo? It's just being persistent and keeping going and keeping enthusiasm and energy. So I'd add persistence to the cocktail for success.
And it is hard because if we have lives and loads of things going on in lives, loads to juggle, and sometimes to keep doing something over and over when you're not immediately seeing the results, it's human nature to think, oh, it's not working.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I love that persistence is just, I suppose, but tie it to, as you said, to the strategy, to a goal. And as long as you're clear that goal hasn't changed and that there's no drastic reason why that tactic shouldn't work, it's just know that consistency, it does get you results eventually.
Yeah, and if you've done the groundwork and spoken to customers and you've done your brand pillars and your messaging and positioning and it's founded on what customers are telling you, then you're not going to be far wrong.
Yeah.
You might need to tweak it over time, but then it's about being persistent and giving it, depending on what you're selling, 12 to 18 months. Your sales cycle historically, and there's early indicators of it working. Traffic will go up, engagement will go up on socials, and you'll get anecdotal feedback from friends and family, or you've started to do a bit more. We're seeing you on LinkedIn all the time. They're the early indicators that, okay, you're on the right track, but just be consistent and persistent in your messaging and make sure, you're always there when people are looking for the insight that you can offer.
Absolutely. And the more that you keep that consistency going, not only is your audience going to reward you, but so are the good old algorithms, because they love that consistency. So love that. What about on ice? What would you encourage everyone to stop doing?
Again, from experience, stop procrastinating. And this ties us back full circle to the start of, I sat on that post for ages for fear of backlash. I don't know why now in hindsight. Yeah, just things generally aren't as bad as you think they're going to be. So you're putting off that activity or that job on your list that you're not going to enjoy, but it ends up taking 10 minutes. And I think we're all guilty of that in personal and professional life. I have procrastinated a lot, and I'm getting better at not. I'm just get it done and it's off your list and you feel good and you can move on. So procrastination would be the one to put on ice.
I love that. And call out when that procrastination is, especially if it's fear-based, which I know it sounds insane, but sometimes getting visible, putting content out there, and we talked about it at the start, it can come with that fear of being judged or rejected. Absolutely. Or all of those things. And then actually the reality is no one cares.
Yeah.
No one cares.
Yeah. And my wife's self-employed as well. And she procrastinates over things, and then I'll be procrastinating over the same thing. She'll be having a go at me. And then I'll point out that, well, it's the same thing you procrastinate over. So it's quite handy because then we both go, yeah, actually, let's just get it done.
Let's just do it.
The boring stuff.
Maybe we should just do each other's
Xero
posts and then I'll get
Xero
done.
and all the invoices on there and stuff like that, which feels like a massive task, but it doesn't take long when you actually do it. So I think that's something that probably might not resonate with everyone, but certainly does with me.
I love that. Ben, thank you so much. I wish we had longer. As I said, I think there's definitely a part 2, and I look forward to seeing, because I'm pretty sure your parts 1 and 2 of that post may well develop into more of a seasonal, frequent post, because there's definitely so many reasons why founders and leaders out there are thinking that marketing isn't working, and in fact, marketing does work, and often it's some of the reasons we discussed, and it's just so valuable to have you on here, flying the flag for the importance of all of the things that you talked about, but especially really getting that initial strategic piece in mind and in place before going into it's something that's so tempting to do something that makes us look and feel busy, but
Yeah.
actually often doesn't lead to results.
Yeah, completely. And it's understandable. Yeah. You want to rush into the doing, but yes, it's that foundations, and before you start scaling, and because we can scale rapidly, it's even more important now. So yeah, that's the takeaway: is breathe, speak to your customers, and then go for it.
Fantastic. So for anybody listening, if you want to know more about Ben, the best thing is to check you out on LinkedIn.
Yep, on LinkedIn. Yeah, it's just Ben Miller Marketing, very original, but it's the Ron Seal approach.
Does what it says on the tin, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, from there, my website's there with the blog posts that dive into these topics in more detail. But if you want them in a succinct manner, the LinkedIn carousels are really good for just planting some seeds that hopefully will help business owners and founders tweak their approach to their marketing so that it can work for them.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ben. I think we could talk about this for hours, as we have
Yes.
done in the past.
Indeed.
Slightly more passionately in the past. I think we did well. Yeah, really appreciate your time this morning, and thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
No worries. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you'd subscribe and share it with somebody who's building things their own way too. This show exists to challenge the default path, to mix things up and create a brand, a business, and a life we actually want. Thanks for listening. See you next time.